What if the key to success isn't specialization, but versatility? Today, we're talking with Monique Lecomte, the author of The Expert Generalist, and she's encouraging us to learn from all of our life experiences.
What I love about Monique's approach is that it's not just about your career and taking the things you've learned in your career. It's really talking about everything in life and using that to get you further. So not just saying, well, I have this degree, or not just saying I went to this school or I took this course, but oh, when I was a child, my family functioned in this way and it gave me these skills that I've brought forward with us.
Like being reflective about the things that you're learning in your everyday experiences and then applying that in all different places. So here's our big talk question. What is a skill or interest that isn't required for your career, but makes you better at it? I was going to say curiosity. I don't know. I think every career requires curiosity these days, but it's not always in the job description. So I would say my curiosity and asking a lot of questions is something that makes me better at my job, but that probably isn't something that if someone was interviewing for this job, someone would ask about your credentials and being curious. Although clearly with this podcast, I've got a few. How about you?
Well,
what would you say?
My job is literally to be curious and ask questions. So I feel like that is a skill that I have, but it is very applicable to what I do. But I would say, we talk about this all the time, but I think relationship building and just creating a network is something that's been very helpful, but it's been helpful in all areas of my life, not just my work. And so I think using that in all areas of my life has been really helpful.
Enjoy our conversation with Monique.
Monique, welcome to the opposite of small talk. We are so excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while since we met months ago.
Yes, I'm so glad to finally have this opportunity. So we start each episode by asking our guest to tell us a little bit about themselves and how they've come to do the work that they do.
Yeah, I grew up in rural Alabama and made my way out west a little over 30 years ago, right after college, and spent more than 20 plus years in the built environment. Started out in interior design and ended up working for Herman Miller for most of my career. So Kristy sitting in a beautiful Aeron chair for those that don't know what Herman Miller is or does. And made a pretty major pivot 2.5 years ago and decided after leading global teams in sales and pretty hyper focused on leadership that I wanted to teach others. And so I lead sales and leadership training in 3 different ways, and that's speaking, coaching, and then facilitating conversations that others can't.
Well, you have also written an incredible book called The Expert Generalist, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So just want to start, tell us what an expert generalist is.
Yeah, so if you think about the letter T, an expert generalist is someone who's really wide in knowledge, but also has deep expertise in different areas as well. And what that allows you to do is actually connect dots across ideas, people, anything that you could think of where you can start to see patterns start to appear. You can zoom in, zoom out. So it's really about taking all of those life experiences, whether it's a side hustle, some traumatic event that happened, or making a pivot career, and what you pick up and you learn along the way in all of those different facets.
So this idea selfishly really resonates with me because I am someone who had a 20-year career in one discipline and then just 4 years ago pivoted into an entirely new career. And I think doing that comes with a lot of imposter syndrome. Most of my peers have a depth of expertise in this discipline as well as advanced degrees. And I think what I know to be true is that I do bring something to the table that's helpful because it's a different perspective that they just can't have having worked in the same discipline forever. So I love the idea of the expert generalist. How did you gravitate to that as a topic, and where do you see that as being like an effective way to be like what disciplines or what areas are best suited for these expert generalists in your
Yeah,
mind?
if you think about it, the most of us are expert journalists, right? Like we don't live in like a Renaissance period where your father was the local baker and then you became the baker and then your son became the baker. Our lives are way more complex. The world is way more complex than that. And we can blame technology for everything, right? But it gave us this opportunity of like roles and jobs that didn't even exist 20 years ago, companies that didn't exist 20 years ago that have been formed. And so for me, it was one of these where, after I had left corporate America, my sister and I had gone to a conference 3 summers ago, and we were sitting there we always laugh about the way that we grew up because we grew up in such abject poverty that I would tell these stories and people would literally look at me like, really? That really happened? Because everything sounded like a big fish story. So we started kind of cataloging what are those crazy stories and then like what did we learn from it, right? Because we lived in a very small town. We never actually went to town. We lived outside of town. And so going to town was like a big event that would maybe happen once a month. My mom would leave us at the house. And so those lessons became the expert generalist lessons because I started thinking about it, like the amount of jobs I have from like the side hustle as a little kid, hustling people for quarters, sweeping their floors to babysitting, to becoming a lifeguard, working at the YMCA, being a camp counselor. Like you start adding all of that up. I think Gen X in particular, if started working really young, you've probably had a lot of roles and a lot of jobs. I don't know of too many college kids when I was growing up that didn't have, multiple jobs.
Yeah. Can I just make an observation here? I think you said at the start, I think everybody's an expert generalist. And then you went on to describe this experience, this childhood experience that you had where you learned a lot of lessons and you took the time to reflect and write them down. I guess what I would say is I agree with you. Everyone has the potential to be an expert generalist, but I wonder how many people are actually thinking that way actively about what am I learning today and that I can apply in a completely different way. So I absolutely love that you did that. And maybe today will help people think about this, not just in different job scenarios, but all of their life experiences. And how do I take this little nugget from here and apply it in this other way?
Yeah, I think that's
Something
a
that I want to
great.
say is, so in Monique's book, it isn't just, well, this was my career and this is what I did. It really is her entire life. And I think it's such a different way of looking at things. Like, I would say the last couple chapters kind of talk about jobs that you've had, but for the most part, it's really from your life experience, the different things. And that's probably where people don't give themselves enough credit
Yes.
because Kristy thinks that her resume started when she started working right after college, and that's not when your resume started. It what started way before then, and it started the skills that you have are way before that. Not just, well, I can on a piece of paper, this is what I've done. It's like what are the lessons I've learned over time that I can take forward and use in a corporate setting, but also in a personal setting.
And those lessons too, I think if you go and read the reviews in your spare time, what you'll see is, it's these lessons are all lessons that we've learned. We just have a different story on how we got there. And maybe it happened sooner or later in our lives. I think growing up in poverty too, there's an Adam Grant in his recent book where it talks about, if you start here and you come from a wealthy family and you have opportunity and means, you're going to, get further down the road, maybe quicker, but it doesn't mean that that person who started maybe behind you could then also pass you. It's kind of the tortoise and the hare because you're learning so much more, so much faster that you can then kind of leapfrog in a lot of instances too.
I think about the scenario too, where you have someone who maybe decides to take a step back from work to take care of family, whether it's elderly parents or newborn children, and then they have this gap in their resume that they're thinking doesn't have value, and yet they've been running a household and learning all of these skills that then you can apply in a new way. So
Navigating the
I love
Medicaid
that.
system. I inherited my mother 6 years ago who has Alzheimer's. And yeah, it's you learn a lot about a lot of things like the dysfunction of our government and like how do I like what is the number that I call in is this caseworker going to stay with me the whole time, or am I going to get ping ponged around to 10 other people and like never get through this little maze? So yeah.
Yeah. So tell us, you talk about there's some core skills that make these generalists powerful leaders. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I think we'll call them superpowers, because the first one I have in the book is adaptability is a superpower, or at least it was my superpower. We went through a lot of change as children, and I think as generalists, like, and especially in this day and age, get ready for change. If you're not prepared, start seeking coaching now, because our world, corporate America, is about to get rocked by AI, and I think it's about how you accept it and how adaptable you're going to be in moving through some of those corporate changes. I mean, look at just technology in general. Since I started, got out of college, I mean, the internet had just been, created, right? And so we've had a lot of things come since then. So I think that adaptability, and then the second is that kind of goes hand in hand with that, is curiosity. Like, you have to be this curious learner, because if you don't learn, you're going to be left behind. Like a guy I used to work with who would print off his emails and have our secretary he would write down what he wanted in the email, and she would type it, and then she would send it,
No.
because he refused to learn how to use email. Or faxing.
Wow.
Faxing, someone who's like, well, we have to fax this. And it's like, no, you need to get a little more curious about how to, I don't know, scan a PDF or create a PDF and email that thing to someone. And then I think the third for me is connection. We keep saying like, oh, AI's come along, they're going to do everything. AI will never have a heart. It will never be who we are. It'll never be able to connect in real life the way that we are now, right? And being able to connect ideas and people and brainstorm in a way that is authentic. Now, again, I can't see into the future, so that might change a little bit. But again, I don't think AI can have a heart and connection the way that we do.
Love the idea of the adaptability, because I've had this conversation with people who are in their 20s now and who are talking about everything's changing so fast, and to explain, like, in my career how much things have changed, and to know, like, you have to be adaptable to it, but then it's also seeing where do you maybe want to push back on some things. And so I gave this example. I said, when I started my working at a company, I had a desktop computer that was at my desk, and I went to my cubicle every morning and I turned it on and I worked, and then at the end of the day I turned it off and would walk out the door, and then didn't come back until the next morning at 9 o'clock, right? And started it all again. And everything still got done. And also, like, you had to fax things to people. This was all these different things that, like, I didn't walk out the door and know what was being connected to everything forever and ever. And that idea of, like, also knowing where to put up a boundary is hard, especially, I think it flew so far in one direction where now everyone is like the pendulum swinging back the other way, to say, like, okay, I'm not going to look at my phone at this time. I don't need to look at work emails at a certain time. But I also remember getting my first BlackBerry and being really excited about it, because I thought it meant, like, who I was. Like, oh, I'm getting a BlackBerry. I'm important.
Begged for a
not
BlackBerry.
knowing, like, that. Right? I was so excited. And then, like, but that knowing that little dot then would be the thing that ruled your life, right? When it turned red and all of a sudden, like, it's the same thing. So but learning that we can swing one way and back another, and being adaptable for that is really important.
Well, I think we already see it, right? Like mega reading clubs, like places with zero technology. I mean, the slow making of things, right? Whether it's indigo dyeing or quilting or whatever all these old school crafts are, because those are things that kind of died too. It's like, let's bring all that stuff back, where you're actually, again, wiring your brain differently, because you're actually using your hands to create and make something. We live in a day and age where if technology did shut down, what would we do? Could you forage your food? Could you make your clothes? Could you do these things? Like, we don't have those skills anymore. And so, yeah, I think we're seeing the pendulum swing. I don't think we're going to go that far, but, definitely like reading clubs and slowing down and playing instruments and jam banding, without technology.
I will say, I was reading a story the other day. There's a new bookstore that's opening up here in San Francisco in Union Square, and was saying how bookstores are actually on the rise. Like, new ones are opening all the time, and that bookstore sales have gone through the roof. And I'm like, that feels really good. That just made me like, my heart
What, 2
felt
new books
warm
a
and
day?
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I refuse
Is
to
it
get,
like the
yeah, good.
is it the bookstore like coffee shop model where you're like hanging out at the bookstore? Do
No,
you
it's
think?
just a
No,
bookstore, I
just
think.
bookstores.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah, just a place
I
to
love it.
go and like read. I think there's more lounge furniture and things like that,
Mm.
but it's not, yeah, it's not that loud, buzzy. It's more like, here's a place to come and be quiet.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I actually went to one that was great in Berkeley that is also a wine bar. And so it was this beautiful place that you could. I actually a past guest, Alison Fergale, who wrote Like Will Badass, did an event there, and so I went to meet her and went to this event, and it was like had these beautiful like jewel toned couches, and you could like just get a book and sit and read and have a glass of wine. Totally off
Okay,
topic,
I'm
but
coming to
things
San
that we need more of in
Francisco.
life.
We're reading.
So we live in a world that feels very specialized sometimes, especially now. And I would say I know people who are looking for jobs and feel as though they need to have like everything super, super specialized for each job that they apply for and all of these stuff. But where can we actually like highlight being a generalist, being an expert generalist in that way?
Yeah, I think it's again, it's like I look at it as like having a foreign language, right? You know, I was just reading, this popped in my head the other day. It was like the Tower of Babel, which is from the Old Testament, and how everyone was trying to, you know, climb this ladder and get to heaven. And God said no. And so gave everyone, you know, the tower fell, everyone spoke a different language and they couldn't communicate anymore. So I think it's like having that specialty. You speak a language or you have something that someone else doesn't have. Now, how do you communicate that? I think it's, again, it's kind of like when you're interviewing, it's like that problem solution. What adversity did you go, again, back to that adversity, adaptability, what did you overcome to get to something, whether you're in sales or whatever that might look like? I think that you can leverage that broad knowledge again to position yourself in a way that others can't. You know, it'll be interesting to see like what are the jobs of the future, and that's what I'm curious about is what does that look like, and then how do you translate that skill into something that you've never heard of before, right? Like, I mean, I can't think of a good example, but it's, you know, like if you were, you know, a software engineer before there was software, people would be like, what is that? You know, that's very specialized. But yeah, I think it's taking those skills and being able to translate them into how you solve problems. And again, that adaptability, because I mean, you look at a lot of larger organizations too, it's going to be very rare, I think, that you would stay in one job your entire career. I mean, that just doesn't exist anymore. It's like, wow, we acquired a company and now we need you to go over here and do that because we know that you've got the wherewithal, the gumption, the grit to get that stuff done because we can throw anything at you and you'll take care of it.
Well, so I was just having a conversation the other day with someone, and it was around the idea of you have to stay in a job for so long. You can't, like, all of the tropes that I think probably our generation and before were really taught, right? That you have to stay. You can't have a on your resume if you moved before a year, like that's terrible. You can't do that. Which I think leads to being more specialized in a way because then you kind of are doing something for so long. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that of being able to move around and do different things?
Yeah. Or, I mean, I've done it, you know, I mean, I've stayed there, you know, 4 years is a little different than 6 months. I mean, I was in the Bay Area leading a sales team, gosh, 14, 15 years ago. I had moved back to the Bay, and it was interesting because all of the resumes I were getting were like, this person's been there 6 months, 1 month. And I think if we talk about, if we want to go down a rabbit hole on biases, that is, I think that is an extreme bias of someone's capability. I wrote an article recently on like culture's the ultimate amenity. Like maybe there just was not a culture fit for this person. You know, maybe they needed to go and explore. I mean, I look at like my sister's kids, you know, they are college age kids, young adults, and they decided to go and work and figure out what they want to do before they attempt to go to college and maybe go back and get a business degree after they've gone and learned an actual trade or a skill or lived in an organization that maybe will pay for their college too. So I think that there's lots of different ways. I think that traditional model is quickly vanishing. And I think there's a lot of kids that are taking gap years and like just really trying to figure it out. I mean, who knows what they want to do at 17? I think it's very rare, very rare.
Yeah, I feel like this, like the generalist, at least in the broader marketplace, gets sort of like under appreciated or under recognized because in in a company, you know who those people are that you can plug into any role and they can figure it out. Like, and you know that because you've seen them do it and they have a reputation for doing that well. It's much harder when you talk about like the external, like there's no accolade that you can put on your resume to say that you're the person that can figure everything out and get things done, right? But ultimately, I think hiring managers like need to get away from this idea that you're like looking for a degree. Like, do you want a resume or do you want a result? And then like, how do you actually interview people to find those gems? It's like fascinating. What do you take? What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, you still have some deep expertise, right? Like you're going to have some passion. I mean, I have passion for design, I have passion for leadership, but I also have passion for cooking and wine and, entertaining and golf and like, we're all these things. I mean, so I think it's, how do you take that information and again, kind of getting back to the that problem solution, like what are you really great at? Because we're all really great at something. It may just take some time to find out what that thing is. But, you even look at like a traditional model. I mean, think back to the 80s, the 90s. Everything was very top down. It was a very ladder driven type of thing. We had done, when I was at Herman Miller, there was a study at one point in time, and it was we did this bubble diagram of how decisions were made, and it was interesting because you have like the CEO, you have the C-suite, you've got your divisionals, your regionals, your whatever, and you would look and it would be like Sally, who sits, in this one area, she knew everybody. Now, maybe it was because she was a social butterfly, she sat in the right place, but it was like that matrixed organization started to evolve. And I think that's where we're at with people's knowledge and, capabilities in that. I was talking to someone yesterday too, and it was something that we don't do. We don't maybe test enough when we're coming into some positions. Like, is there a culture test? Is this person a right fit? Stephen Bartlett, who's the Diary of a CEO, who has a podcast, actually has this culture test. Like, how can you use that within the HR system to go, is this person kind of fitting into this area or that area? And does that make sense?
Sounds like a topic ripe for employment lawyers. you know, to be like,
We'll see how it works.
yeah, yeah.
As someone who got fired for not being a culture fit within 30 days, it would be nice to have a period that, works for that. It's a whole other story we could go into.
Do I know that story? I feel like I don't remember. How do I not know that story?
Yeah, that was. But that's not neither here nor there. But I do think there should be some sort of a way to figure that out, right? Like, I don't know. I think we put so much pressure on when we hire somebody that you're going to come in and be able to do this thing right away, number one, which is a ridiculous thing, pressure to put on someone, but also probably a pressure that we put on ourselves more than everything else, right? To be like, well, I'm here and they hired me to do this thing and now I need to know. And where our imposter syndrome comes in and all of that stuff shows up.
Well, one of those great questions to ask is how sophisticated is your training program? I think that in my past industry, there is no training. There is no playbook. There is nothing. You get kerplunked in and you just kind of have to figure it out. So it's, you got to set people up for success too, whether that's having a mentor internally that is like shepherding them through the whole system, because you can't know everything about everything. And again, that goes back to that adaptability, being able, do you have the ability to learn? Do you want to learn? How many things do you want to learn? How far do we take this?
And that goes to something we talk about all the time on here, is having a growth mindset. And that is just banking on your ability to learn. Not that you know everything, but you have the ability to do that. And I feel like that was the theme that was coming through as I was reading your book, is like, I don't know how to do this, but I'm gonna figure out how it works. And I think that is such a huge part that people don't give themselves credit for, or don't, I don't know, I market that to walk in
Going
and
back
say
to
like,
the
I'm a
first,
growth-minded person.
yeah, or thinking about again that when we started this conversation, the imposter syndrome is like going out there, because one of my lessons is toot your own horn. I didn't get a scholarship in college the first time I applied for it, and I was devastated. I mean, like devastated to a point of like hysterical crying. And I just thought, okay, what now? What am I going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to go talk to my dean and find out why I didn't get it, and tell her what I need to do to get it next year. What is that thing? And she told me, you know me, but there's this massive board that makes this decision. You need a network. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to network. And I was already a natural networker, but it's like that unlock that happened that I would not have known if I would have just sat there on my sofa, wallowing in it for the next year. So anyways, the next year I got the scholarship.
I feel like is there like a story here of like, how do you pay closer attention to those kinds of things and ask the right questions to to be able to learn from that experience that like learn from what's going on around you.
Yeah, I think you got to take your head out of the sand. I think when you're in, I'm going to generalize corporate America, when your head's down in your work, it's really tough to look up sometimes and kind of see what's going on around you. And so actually scheduling that time to just like, again, not be on your technology, not like write down your thoughts. Like, how did this day go? What would I have changed? Where did I feel uncomfortable? Or, wow, man, that was a great day. I said yes to things I never would have said yes to. Like, that's a good day. So what does good look like?
I love a good journal prompt.
Exactly. I was going to say, Kristy has a work journal, so everybody should get that, right? Go
Yes.
ahead, plug yourself.
Where can we find
Toot
it?
your own horn, Kristy.
Toot
Talk
your
about
own
it.
horn.
Yeah, tell me
Okay,
about the journal.
so I've been a journaler for years and years, and what I realized is that a lot of work stuff was showing up in my daily journaling practice. And if I look back, like I could see some things that were themes, but it was a little tough to do because everything was all like intermixed. And so I created something called the work journal, and it has 6 different sets of question prompts that help people to pay closer attention to their work day as they're doing it, and then reflect on it later. And the cool thing is there's an index, so that, let's say you want to understand how you make decisions. You can use the decision making questions as like thought starters to journal about the big decisions that you're making. And then, at a later point in time, after you've been doing this for a bit, you can go back through and see, like, okay, like it looks like I have a blind spot for X. Cause like each of these big decisions that I've made over the last 6 months, I didn't think about whatever downstream repercussion, whatever it is. You can sort of identify themes of your behavior and then think about ways that you could improve going forward. So it's available. We'll link it in the show notes. It's just called Work Journal. So if you search Amazon for Work Journal Kristy Ollinger, you will find it.
I love it. No, I think that's amazing, because I don't, again, like Danielle and I both coach people as well. And I don't know if you do, Kristy. I'm sure you probably do. But it's giving people the tools, right? Because I don't think the tools exist anymore. When I started out my career, it was very regimented. You're going to this training for this week, then the next week you're going to go to this training, and then you're going to do this thing. And if you don't do this, then you can't get to this. It was very formal. And then the good old iPhone came out, and they're like, we're going to create apps, and everybody's going to take this and they're going to learn. Everybody cheats the system and gets through the thing and gets their little check marks, and they move on. And now we're just kind of in, I don't know, from a lot of people I talk to, like there's no training going on whatsoever. And the apps or the training materials are just so ancient and not relevant. I think maybe during COVID, people kind of like sparked it back up again. But yeah, I think having those tools, and again, you're talking about like doing something old school, like actually writing, triggers creativity in the brain. So I love it. Check it out.
Yeah.
Tell us what your takeaway, and maybe the way that you've thought about things a little bit different, of like defining your success when you call yourself a generalist.
I write about this, and I actually just did a video recently on this. It was around, I think for so long we climb the ladder, we climb the ladder, and we climb the ladder, and we think that that's happiness, and maybe it is for a minute, but then it's back to work, right? I look at it as like the generalist is like a road. Like you're on this road. It's like you could be running on a trail, you could be somewhere, and you're like, oop, okay, log down, got to climb over it, detour. Do I go left? Do I go right? Am I going to get lost? What's happening? So I look at like trails and roads as like this generalist piece, right? Like that's where the adventure I think comes in, because that's what I've loved so much about, for me, success is like helping other people. And that can be in a lot of different ways. And then it's meeting other people. Like I love humans. I love learning from other people. I love different perspectives of thought. Like I love surrounding myself with like the biggest weirdo crew you've ever seen, because I'm like, they think so different than I do. So for me, success would be in that generalist sense, or being a generalist is just like taking all those great things that other people do or have incorporated that work, so I don't have to go and try to figure it out for myself, right?
I love that metaphor of a road as opposed to a ladder, because I think sometimes what happens is we are climbing a ladder and then realize it's against the wrong wall, right? We're climbing up the wrong wall and we haven't even thought about that. And like, so when you're on a road, it's a lot easier to know that you have other choices. You get to make a left or a right. You get to turn around. But when you're on a ladder and you're only going in one direction and can't see anything else, I think that can be harmful.
Or again, it's that old paradigm of what we were told we were supposed to do. I mean, I was climbing the ladder, moving to different markets, starting different roles, because it got me an extra 15 or 20 grand a year. I mean, it was like crazy stuff like that. Like, was it worth it? Yeah, I learned a lot, but I think that success is going to look very different in the future. I mean, what if, again, going back to that culture and those measurements and stuff, like happiness, what if happiness was the number one indicator at work? Like, I would go find the happiest company to work for and go find out what the heck they're doing and go try to get a job there, right? Like, how cool would that be?
Yeah, for sure.
And as an expert generalist, they probably need you.
I'll bring the book.
There you go. Well, Monique, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom with us. Is there any last thing you would like to leave our audience with?
I was asked this the other day about something, and they're like, what would you tell your younger self? And I'm like, just be your frickin' self, right? Like, nobody else can be you, me, you. Like, we all have different DNA. We all have different life experiences. And I think that's what makes life fun, is when we're just ourselves, your true, authentic self.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me.
If you want to have more of your own opposite of small talk conversations, we can help.
We've created a starter pack of big talk questions that you can download and use to ditch the boring small talk and create more meaningful conversations with the people around you. Get it in the link below. If you liked this episode, please subscribe and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of this topic and what you'd like to hear about next. Thanks for watching.
Stay curious and talk big.